Victor Hartley was 42 years old, and he had spent the last 20 of those years traveling through space. He knew what danger looked like. He knew what death looked like too. So when the alarm screamed through the cargo bay at 0400 hours, Victor did not panic. He simply moved toward the nearest wall and grabbed the support rail. The ship jerked hard to the left. Victor's body slammed against the cold metal, and he felt the impact in his ribs. The lights flickered twice, then stabilized, though they were now painted in angry red. This was not a drill. The Starling was in trouble. Victor pushed himself away from the wall and moved toward the corridor. His boots made hard sounds on the metal floor. Around him, the ship groaned. Metal screamed against metal. There was a sound like something tearing, deep and terrible. Victor had been on damaged ships before. He knew that sound meant the structural integrity was breaking. He reached the bridge in less than 2 minutes. His communications officer, a young man named Derek, was already pulling data from the sensors. His hands moved fast across the controls. "Captain," Derek said without looking up, "we have a situation." "Talk to me," Victor said. He moved to the main viewport and looked out into the black. That was when he saw it. A ship was falling toward the planet below. It was not human. The shape was wrong, too elegant, too organic. The hull was tearing itself apart. Great chunks of the vessel came away and drifted into space. From the ruptures came explosions of atmosphere and fuel, spreading out like blood in water. "Their distress beacon activated 3 minutes ago," Derek said, "before we even detected them. They must have been moving fast. The collision with our navigation satellite is what triggered the sensors." "How many aboard?" Victor asked. "Unknown, sir. We are trying to decode their transmission, but the signal is degraded. Whatever they are, their technology is advanced. Maybe better than ours, but it is not helping them now." Victor watched the alien ship fall. He watched the atmosphere below glow brighter as the vessel hit the upper layers. The ship moved like a meteor, burning, falling, dying. There were people on that ship. Intelligent beings. They were conscious, and they were dying right now, in front of him. "Can we track it?" Victor asked. "We can follow its trajectory. It will impact the planet's surface in approximately 4 minutes," Derek said. "Send a probe." "I want to know exactly where it lands," Victor said. "And send a message to the Surface Research Station. Tell them we have an emergency situation developing." "Captain, we do not know if those things are hostile," Derek said. "Our protocols say we should not approach unknown alien vessels." Victor was already moving toward the door. "They are not vessels anymore. They are wreckage. And there are survivors on that planet. If we have the capability to help, we have the obligation to help." 30 minutes later, Victor was suiting up in the hangar bay. The probe had done its job. The alien ship had impacted about 200 kilometers northeast of the Human Research Station in a rocky, desolate area. The atmosphere was breathable, though thin. Oxygen at 60%. Carbon dioxide levels were elevated. But humans could survive for a short time without suits. Patricia Chun was his second officer, a smart woman with cold eyes and faster reflexes than anyone else on the ship. She was already in her suit, checking the emergency medical kit. "You do not have to go," Victor said to her as he sealed his helmet. "Someone has to keep you alive, sir," Patricia said. "You have a habit of making decisions with your heart. That gets people killed." "Or it saves lives," Victor replied. The transport landed hard. They had maybe 6 hours of oxygen and the equipment to maintain basic life support for unknown alien physiology. It was not much, but it was what they had. The crash site was worse than Victor expected. The debris was spread across an area half a kilometer wide. Some pieces were still smoking. The heat in the air made the suit's cooling system work hard. Through the faceplate, Victor could see the strange metal of the alien vessel. It was not steel or aluminum. It was something else, something that glowed faintly even as it cooled. His team moved carefully through the wreckage. There were 6 of them: Patricia, a medical specialist named Kevin, an engineer named Helen, 2 security officers, and Victor. They searched the debris, looking for any sign of life. It was Kevin who found her first. He called out through the suit radio, his voice urgent but controlled. The secondary hull had twisted into itself when the ship hit. It was a small chamber, maybe 4 meters across. Inside was a being that was both familiar and completely alien. She had 2 arms and 2 legs. She had a head and a face. She had eyes and a mouth. But everything about her proportions was wrong. Her limbs were too long. Her skin was not skin at all, but something that seemed to shift between deep blue and purple colors. Her eyes were large, black like empty space, and they were looking directly at Victor, and she was screaming. The sound came through the suit's external sensors, and it made every human in the area flinch. It was not a human scream. It was deeper, more textured, more raw. It was pure agony, pure suffering, the sound of an organism being torn apart from the inside. The alien woman was pinned under a piece of the hull. The metal had twisted around her torso, not crushing her, but holding her in place. Her mouth opened even wider than Victor would have thought possible. Her body convulsed. Her black eyes rolled, then locked back onto Victor's face. "Do not approach," Patricia's voice came through the radio. "We do not know if she is dangerous. We do not know what that scream means." But Victor could see what it meant. He could see it in the way her body shook. He could see it in the way her skin seemed to be burning from within, a kind of heat that glowed faintly beneath the surface. She was dying. Something inside her was destroying her, and she was conscious enough to feel every moment of it. Victor moved forward. "Captain," Patricia said, her voice sharp. Victor ignored her. He moved closer to the alien woman. The screaming did not stop. It got louder. But her eyes stayed on his face. That was important. She was aware. She was terrified. She was suffering beyond anything Victor could truly understand. He reached out, slowly, with his gloved hand. He placed it on her arm, on that strange shifting skin that felt hot even through the suit's insulation. The screaming stopped. The alien woman's body went rigid. Then it relaxed slightly. Her black eyes fixed on Victor's face, and he saw something there that transcended species. He saw fear. He saw recognition. He saw hope, maybe, or something like it. "Get her out," Victor said. "Carefully. We need to stabilize her and get her to the ship." His team moved into action. They worked carefully to remove the twisted metal without causing more damage. They prepared the medical transport, and Victor kept his hand on the alien woman's arm. She made a sound then, not a scream. It was something else. Clicks and whistles and harmonics that Victor's ears could barely process. But he understood the meaning. "Thank you. Please do not let me die alone." "We are not going to let you die," Victor said simply. "You are not alone anymore." The medical bay aboard the Starling was cold and sterile. Stainless steel walls. White lights that hummed constantly. Everything was designed to be clean, to be safe, to be far away from the chaos of the outside universe. The alien woman did not fit in this place. She was too strange, too organic, too much like a wounded animal dropped into a laboratory. They had secured her to the medical bed with restraints, not to hurt her, but to keep her stable. Patricia had calibrated the sensors as best she could, trying to understand what was happening inside the alien's body. The readings were confusing. Her internal temperature was still climbing, despite the cooling units they had positioned around her. Her heart rate was irregular, spiking and dropping in ways that made no sense. and her cellular structure was breaking down. Her body is basically consuming itself, Kevin said. He was the medical specialist, and he was staring at his tablet with an expression that mixed confusion and despair. Look at these readings. Whatever happened in the crash, it triggered some kind of cascade reaction in her cells. It is like her body is in a state of uncontrolled fusion. She is burning from the inside out. Victor stood across the medical bed from Patricia, his arms crossed. The alien woman's black eyes tracked him constantly, even though she was no longer screaming. That was almost worse. The silence was heavy with pain and awareness. Can we stop it? Victor asked. Not with the equipment we have, Patricia said. She did not look away from the monitors. We could try deep cooling, bring her core temperature down. That might slow the process. But stopping it completely? That would require understanding her biology in ways we simply do not have time for. Captain, I think we need to prepare for the fact that she is going to die. Probably within the next 12 to 24 hours. The alien woman made a sound. It was not a scream. It was lower, almost like a groan mixed with the clicking sounds they had heard before. Her black eyes closed, then opened again, focusing back on Victor. Start the cooling protocol, Victor said. Every hour we buy is an hour we have to find another solution. And somebody needs to sit with her. She should not be alone. Patricia looked at him sharply. Captain, she is an alien. We do not know if she even experiences fear or loneliness. She might not understand human presence at all. Then it will not hurt to try, Victor said simply. He moved around the medical bed and pulled a chair close to the alien woman's side. He sat down. For the first several hours, nothing changed. The cooling system worked. The alien woman's internal temperature dropped from 39.8 degrees Celsius to 37.3 degrees. The cellular breakdown slowed, but it did not stop. Kevin monitored her constantly, checking readings, adjusting the machines, trying everything he could think of. Nothing worked. The woman was still dying. They were just making it slower. Frank came by around hour 6. Frank was the cook, a large man with a gentle nature that did not match his size. He carried a tray with a glass of water and a clean cloth. I thought she might be thirsty, he said awkwardly. He stood in the doorway, not wanting to intrude. That is kind of you, Victor said. See if she will drink. It might help her body process the heat. Frank moved carefully to the medical bed. The alien woman's eyes tracked him, but she did not make any sounds. Frank offered her the water. She could not move her arms, so he lifted the cup to her mouth. Some of the water ran down her face, but some of it went into her mouth. She swallowed. It was something. Helen, the engineer, stopped by a few hours later. She had a tablet with her and sat down near the medical bed, working quietly on her repair schedules. She did not try to talk to the alien woman. She just sat there, in the same space, providing company through silence. By hour 18, the alien woman was still alive, still conscious, still slowly dying. But something had changed. The desperation in her black eyes had faded. She was still in pain, still afraid, but she was not alone anymore. Victor sat with her through 2 rotations of the crew. Patricia brought him food and coffee. Derek from communications stopped by to check on her vital signs. Even the security officers, who had been the most afraid of her at first, came to see her. It was hour 22 when the alien woman made a new sound. Not the screaming sound she made before. Not the clicking and whistles. It was a clear, deliberate series of sounds, harmonics, patterns. Kevin pulled back from the monitors. Captain, her heart rate is dropping, he said. Significantly. I think the end is coming. Victor stood from his chair. The alien woman's black eyes followed him. He reached out and took her hand in his own. Her skin was cool now, cool by the machines, but it still had that odd quality of shifting colors beneath the surface. She squeezed his hand. It was weak, barely perceptible, but it was real. "You are not alone," Victor said to her. "We are here. You are safe." She made another sound. Quieter now, less desperate. It sounded almost like acceptance. Her eyes began to close, but she opened them again, forced them to stay focused on Victor's face, as if she was trying to memorize what she saw there. Patricia moved to the other side of the medical bed. She placed her hand on the alien woman's arm. Kevin stood nearby, watching the monitors. Frank was there too. Helen came in, and Derek, and the security officers. 7 humans standing around a dying alien, bearing witness to her final moments. The alien woman's grip on Victor's hand loosened. Her eyes stayed open for a few more seconds, locked on his face. Then they closed. The monitors showed the final spike, then the slow descent. Her heart rate fell. Her breathing, which had been labored and painful, simply stopped. Kevin checked the readings and then looked up. He did not need to say anything. His expression said it all. Victor held the alien woman's hand for a long time after she was gone. Patricia broke the silence first. "She was looking for something," Patricia said quietly. "When you held her hand, when you sat with her, she was looking for something, and when you gave it to her, she was able to let go." "What was she looking for?" Kevin asked. Nobody answered, because they all knew. It was something simple, something that transcended species and biology and intelligence. It was acknowledgement. It was the knowledge that your suffering mattered to someone else, that your life had been seen, that your death was witnessed, that you were not just a random thing dying in the darkness. Victor finally let go of her hand. He stood up slowly, his body stiff from sitting. "Prepare her body with respect," he said. "Whatever species she was, whoever she was, she mattered. We will treat her that way." The crew nodded in silence. And in that silence, something had shifted. They had been afraid of her at first, but by the end, they had seen her as something worth protecting, worth comforting, worth mourning. The alien woman may have been the first of her kind to be treated that way by humans. And that kindness, that recognition of shared suffering, would change the course of the future in ways they could not yet imagine. The message reached human authorities within 2 weeks. By that time, the Starling had arrived at the research station and begun the proper transmission protocols. Victor gave his formal report. He detailed the crash, the rescue attempt, the death of the alien woman, and the discovery of her final recording. Everything was documented. Everything was official. The human military responded first. There were immediate orders for heightened alert. Ships were moved to strategic positions. Weapon systems were checked and rechecked. The possibility of an alien invasion was suddenly real, and the human powers that ruled the space territories reacted with the speed of panic. But the message also reached academic institutions. Scientists began analyzing VARIS words. Linguists worked to improve the translation. Diplomats began preparing theoretical responses. And slowly, a different picture emerged. This was not a warning of imminent invasion. This was a plea. This was a scout telling her people to reconsider what they were doing. 6 weeks after the Starling's arrival at the station, something unexpected happened. A Zeokazari ship entered human space. But it came alone, not with weapons charged or shields raised. It came with a clear transmission. Peaceful contact desired. The Galactic Council, which had been watching humanity with neutral distance, suddenly became interested. They sent representatives to observe the first official human contact with the Giari. Victor was ordered to attend the meeting as the human who had discovered the alien woman and heard her final message. The negotiations took place on a station orbiting a neutral planet. Humans and Jory sat across a wide table, separated by culture and biology, and millions of years of separate evolution. Victor sat at the head of the human delegation, though other officials with more authority ranked above him. But they had asked for him specifically. They wanted the man who had known Viaris. The Shari delegation was led by a female. She was taller than Vicharis had been, and her skin was a brighter shade of blue. Her black eyes were intelligent and careful. She introduced herself through a translation system as Ambassador Torres. "We come to understand what happened to our sister," the ambassador said carefully in her accented human speech. "We come to understand why Captain Victor Hartley showed her kindness when, by all reports, he should have feared her." Victor stood up slowly. All eyes moved to him. He was not a diplomat. He was a freighter captain. But he had been chosen for this moment, and he would do his best. "I showed her kindness because she was suffering," Victor said simply. "She was intelligent. She was conscious. She was dying." The decision was simple. The ambassador stared at him for a long moment. Then she made a sound, not in human speech, but in the clicking and whistling language of her people. Other Jukari delegation members made the same sounds. It took Victor a moment to realize they were not angry. They were emotional. The closest human equivalent would have been tears. "In our civilization," the ambassador said, "we believe that kindness without benefit is weakness. We believe that those who help others must receive something in return. This is how we have built our power. This is how we have conquered other civilizations. We take what we want. We do not give freely." She paused, and her black eyes fixed on Victor. "Vigeries discovered something else," the ambassador continued. "She discovered that this belief is wrong, that there is strength in kindness, that a species capable of feeling compassion for a stranger, even a stranger from another world, is the strongest species of all." The human delegation sat in silence. This was not what anyone had expected. The ambassador produced her own device, similar to Vicharis, but larger and more complex. She activated it, and Vicharis' message played again, but this time in the original Zeokari language, untranslated. When the recording ended, the ambassador stood. "We've debated this message for 6 weeks," she said. "We have argued about its meaning. Some of us still believe that invading humanity would be acceptable. But Vioris was respected. She was a scholar and a diplomat. And she chose to send this message rather than pretend she never met Captain Hartley. We cannot ignore that choice. We will not invade humanity. Instead, we offer alliance. We offer trade. We offer the opportunity to learn from each other." The chief human diplomat, a woman named Margaret Stone, stood up slowly. "This is unexpected," Margaret said carefully. "We will need to discuss the terms of such an alliance." "Of course," the ambassador said. She turned back to Victor. "But first, I wish to speak with Captain Hartley alone. Is this acceptable?" Victor looked toward Margaret, who nodded slightly. He followed the ambassador out of the meeting chamber into a small room with a viewport looking out over the stars. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The ambassador stood at the viewport, her blue skin almost glowing in the starlight. "You do not understand what you did," the ambassador finally said. "I held her hand," Victor said. "That is all." "No," the ambassador replied. "You changed the future. You showed a Jari warrior something she had never seen before, something we had all forgotten how to see. You showed her that the universe contains mercy. You showed her that a stranger will care for a dying stranger. This is not simple. This is revolutionary." The ambassador turned to face Victor directly. "My people sent Vicharis to evaluate humans for invasion," the ambassador said. "She died. But her last words were about you, about how you held her hand. about how you made her feel less alone. And because you did this small thing, humanity was saved. Because you showed kindness to a stranger, an entire species changed its course. Victor did not know how to respond. He had simply done what felt right. He had not known it would matter so much. "We want to understand how you think," the ambassador said. "We want to understand your concept of mercy. We want to learn what Vieras discovered. And in exchange, we will share our technology. We will share our knowledge. We will make humans equal partners in the galactic community." She extended her hand, the gesture mirroring what Victor had done in the medical bay. Holding out a hand to someone in pain, Victor took it. "Vasharis believed that humans possess something that will change the galaxy," the ambassador said. She believed that this quality, this capacity for compassion, was more valuable than any weapon or technology. She sent her final message so that we would understand, so that we would choose differently. "I am sorry she died," Victor said. "I am sorry we could not save her." "You did save her," the ambassador said. "You saved her from dying alone and afraid. You saved her from thinking that her life did not matter. In my culture, this is considered the greatest gift that one being can give to another. You saved Vieras in the way that truly matters." They stood together, looking out at the stars. Two members of different species, connected by the memory of a woman who had taught them both something important, something that would spread through the galaxy like light through darkness. The alien woman was properly secured in the cold storage unit. Victor had insisted on this despite the crew's suggestions to simply dispose of her body into space. She deserved better. They all agreed, though none of them could fully explain why. 3 days passed. The ship continued its route back toward the human station. The crew maintained normal operations. Repairs were made. Logs were updated. Life went on. But something was different. People spoke more quietly. They moved with more purpose. The presence of the alien woman, even in death, had changed something in how they treated each other. Patricia was alone in the science lab when she found it. The device had been secured with the alien woman's personal effects, held in a container designed to protect valuable items. Patricia was cataloging everything, making notes for the official report that would go to the human authorities. The device was not large, maybe the size of a human fist. It was crystalline in nature, but not like any crystal Patricia had ever seen. It seemed to contain layers of light inside it, shifting and moving as if it were alive. The colors were faint blues and purples, the same colors as the alien woman's skin. Patricia was careful as she began her analysis. She ran every scan she could think of. She measured its composition. She recorded its weight, its temperature, its electromagnetic signature. Nothing broke it. Nothing seemed to harm it. Then, on her 7th scan, something happened. The device responded. Light moved through it more deliberately. Patricia stepped back, unsure if she had just made a mistake or discovered something important. "Captain," she said into her communicator, "you should come to the science lab." Victor arrived 5 minutes later. Patricia showed him the device and explained what she had found. Victor picked it up carefully, feeling its weight. The crystal was warm to the touch. "Can you access it?" Victor asked. "I have been trying," Patricia said. "It appears to be storage. Data storage in a format I do not fully understand. The structure is organic in some way. It responds to certain frequencies of electromagnetic radiation. When I exposed it to those frequencies, I think it started to open. But the data format is complex. It will take time to decode." "How much time?" Victor asked. "At least several hours," Patricia said. "Maybe longer. But sir, if this is what I think it is, it could contain the identity of that woman. Her people, her civilization, everything. Victor nodded. Keep working on it. And Patricia, be careful. We do not know if there are security protocols built into this thing. It took 17 hours of careful analysis. Patricia was still working when Victor came back to check on her progress. She had barely left the lab. There was empty coffee cups on her desk and dark circles under her eyes. I have something, she said without any preamble. It is a personal data storage device. A record. I think it is a will of some kind. A will? Victor asked. Why would someone carry that? I think she knew the crash was going to happen, Patricia said. Or at least, she was aware of the danger. She prepared this in case. The device contains personal information, but also something else. A message. A recording. I have been trying to decode it, but the translation protocol is damaged. However, I was able to extract the core information. Patricia pulled up the data on her monitor. The text was in English, translated by the device's internal system, though the grammar was sometimes broken. Her name was Futuristic, Patricia said, reading from the screen. She was approximately 36 years old by human standards. She was a scout, an explorer and diplomat. She was traveling to the human sector to make initial contact with humanity. Why? Victor asked. Patricia scrolled down. Her expression became more serious. Because her civilization, the Jari Collective, had decided to invade us. They were building warships. They had plans to conquer human space and absorb human populations into their empire. Futuristic was sent first to evaluate whether humans were a threat that needed special consideration. She was supposed to gather intelligence and report back. Victor absorbed this information slowly. The alien woman he had held the hand of while she died. The being they had mourned and treated with respect. She had been sent to gather intelligence for an invasion force. There is more, Patricia said. A personal message. I was able to reconstruct most of it. She recorded this before she left her home world. She was anticipating that she might not return. She wanted her people to understand what she discovered. Patricia activated the audio file. A synthetic translation system came online, converting the clicks and whistles and harmonics of the alien language into simple English words. If you are listening to this, the voice said, I have likely not survived my journey. The humans are far from their home world. The space is vast. Accidents happen. But I need to tell you something important about what I discovered. I was sent to determine if humans were strong enough to challenge the HFY. I was sent to evaluate them as either allies or threats. What I found changed everything I believed about strength. The message continued. Patricia had translated it carefully, preserving Futuristic's meaning as best as she could. The humans are not as advanced as we are. Their technology is inferior. Their weapon systems are weaker. By every measure of physical power, they are inferior. But I discovered something that no measurement can capture. I discovered that humans have something we lost generations ago. Humans experience empathy. Humans feel pain when others suffer. Humans will help those who cannot help them in return. Humans will show kindness to strangers. Humans will die protecting those they barely know. Victor stopped listening for a moment. He thought of how they had treated the alien woman. How they had sat with her. How Patricia had worked so hard to understand her. How Frank had offered her water. How Helen had provided silent company in her suffering. Continue, Victor said to Patricia. I met a human briefly, the message continued, before my ship was destroyed. His name was Victor Hartley. He was the captain of his ship. When I was dying, when the pain was overwhelming my consciousness, he did something that no G-Carry would do. He touched me. He held my hand. He sat with me. He showed me that I was not alone. This is the strength we forgot. This is what makes a civilization worth surviving. The recording paused, as if Viosharis had needed to gather herself. My people plan to conquer humanity through military force. We plan to dominate them through technology and power. But if we invade humans, if we try to make them servants and slaves, we will destroy the very thing that makes them strong. We will lose the chance to learn from them. We will make an enemy of a species that was capable of showing kindness to a stranger. The message ended. Patricia turned off the audio. Victor sat down heavily in the nearest chair. She knew, Patricia said quietly. When you reached out to her, when you held her hand, she knew what you were doing. She recognized your kindness for what it was. And she recorded it. She sent that message home, knowing that her death and your response would reach her civilization. What do we do? Victor asked. That is the question, sir, Patricia said. That message will reach the Ziokiari collective. We have no way of knowing what they will do with the information. They could come here with a fleet tomorrow. Or they could listen to what their scout discovered. They could decide that invading humanity would be a mistake. Victor thought about Viosharis lying in the medical bay, her black eyes focused on his face. He thought about the moment when the screaming stopped. He thought about how a simple act of human kindness had become something far more important than anyone could have predicted. Make sure that message is backed up, Victor said. Store it in multiple locations. Make copies. Make it impossible for anyone to suppress. If Viosharis wanted her people to hear her final words, then they will hear them. We owe her that much. Patricia nodded and began her work. And across the space between stars, the dead alien woman's final message was prepared to change the course of history. The treaty was signed 2 months later. The Ziokiari collective officially withdrew all military preparations targeting human space. In exchange, humanity entered into cultural and scientific exchange agreements. Trade routes were established. Educational programs were begun. It was the fastest diplomatic turnaround in recorded history, and it was all because of a dying alien woman and the human who had held her hand. But the real change came slowly. Word of what had happened spread through the galactic community. Other alien species began to understand that humans were different. Humans showed kindness to the suffering. Humans treated even enemies with dignity if those enemies were helpless. This was not a weakness. This was a form of strength that most civilizations had abandoned generations ago. 5 years passed. Victor Hartley left the commercial shipping industry and accepted a position as a cultural liaison between humanity and the Jari collective. It was unexpected work for a freighter captain, but he was the one that both species trusted. He had been there at the beginning, when kindness changed everything. He traveled between human space and Ziokiari space regularly. He participated in joint scientific projects. He sat on committees that made decisions about how 2 species could live together peacefully in the same galactic region. But the work that mattered most to him was the memorial. The Viosharis Institute was created as a joint human and Jikari educational facility. Its purpose was to teach the principles of cross-species cooperation and understanding. Its curriculum was built on the story of Viosharis and what she had discovered. Students learned about compassion. They learned about mercy. They learned about the value of recognizing suffering in others and choosing to help. Even when there was no benefit in return, Victor came to the Institute on the day of its opening. The building was beautiful, built with both human and Jari architecture merged together. Inside, a memorial chamber had been created. There was a statue of Viosharis in the center, rendered by a sculptor who had worked from records and images. Her black eyes looked out over the space, and her hands were positioned as if reaching out to someone in need. Beside the statue was another memorial. It showed Victor kneeling, his hand outstretched, the moment of contact frozen in stone and metal. Beneath both statues, a plaque read, "Kindness changes everything." The ceremony began in the afternoon. Representatives from a dozen different alien species attended. The GRE delegation was led by Ambassador Therese. The human government had sent officials of the highest rank. Scientists and educators and students all gathered to witness the official opening of the Institute. Taurus gave the opening speech. She spoke about Beatrice, about her sacrifice, about her discovery. She spoke about how humanity had answered a dying woman with compassion instead of fear. She spoke about how that single act had prevented a war and opened the door to a new way of existing in the galaxy. Visharis believed that kindness is the strongest thing in the universe, Taurus said. Not because kindness defeats weapons, not because kindness conquers through force, but because kindness changes how we see each other. It breaks down the barriers that separate us. It creates understanding where there was only suspicion. It makes allies where there would have been only enemies. She turned to Victor. Captain Hartley was not a diplomat, Taurus continued. He was not trained in cross-species relations. He was not authorized to make any decision regarding first contact with alien life. But he understood something fundamental. He understood that suffering matters, that consciousness matters, that the desire to ease another being's pain is not a weakness but a form of wisdom. The ceremony concluded with a moment of silence. Every being present stood quietly, thinking about Vieiris, thinking about what she had given to the galaxy by dying and having her final message heard. Later, as the crowds dispersed, Victor found himself alone in the memorial chamber with Therese. They stood looking at the statues together. "Do you regret it?" Taurus asked. "Showing her kindness? If you had known that it would change your entire life, change the course of history, would you still have done the same thing?" Victor considered the question carefully. "Yes," he said finally. "I would have. Not because of what it led to, but because she was suffering, and she was alone, and I could help her feel less alone." That was reason enough. Taurus made a sound, the clicking and whistling that might have been laughter or might have been emotion. It was hard to tell with her species. "This is why Vieiris sent her message," Taurus said. "This is why she trusted that humans could teach us something. She saw this quality in you. She saw that you helped her not for reward or advantage, but because it was the right thing to do. In all our civilization, in all our years of conquest and power, we had forgotten how to do things because they were right." She extended her hand to Victor, just as Victor had done to Vieiris. He took it without hesitation. "The future is different now," Taurus said, "because of what Vieiris discovered, because of what you showed her. The galactic community is learning that strength is not just the ability to dominate others. Strength is the ability to recognize suffering and respond with compassion." Months turned into years. The Vieiris Institute became famous throughout the galaxy. Students came from dozens of different species to learn about cross-cultural understanding and compassion. The story of Victor and Vieiris was studied and discussed and analyzed. Some people thought it was too simple, too idealistic. But the results were undeniable. Species that would have fought began cooperating. Communities that would have been isolated began communicating. Victor grew older. His hair turned gray and then white. His face became lined with age. But he continued his work with the Institute. He continued to tell the story of Vieiris. He continued to remind people that kindness matters, that compassion changes things, that a single act of recognizing another being's suffering can alter the course of the future. On the day Victor died, the entire Galactic Council held a moment of silence. They did not do this for many humans. Victor had earned this honor not through military victories or political power, but through his choice to be kind to a stranger. The memorial to Victor was added to the chamber beside Vieiris. The two statues stood together, forever frozen in the moment that changed everything. Victor kneeling, Visionaries reaching out, their hands almost touching Dot, and beneath both statues, the plaque remained. Kindness changes everything. In universities and schools across known space, students still studied this story. They learned about the two beings who proved that compassion could reshape civilization. They learned that strength is not measured in weapons or power, but in the willingness to see suffering and choose to help. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, the idea spread. The idea that kindness matters. That helping others is not weakness. That recognizing the suffering of another being and choosing to ease that suffering is the highest form of strength. Visionaries had wanted her people to understand this. She had sent her message across the stars, trusting that her final words would reach those who needed to hear them. And they did. And the galaxy was changed, not by force, but by the simple act of one being reaching out to comfort another. The future would remember Visionaries. The future would remember Victor Hartley. And the future would never forget what they had taught the stars. The kindness changes everything.